So welcome back, and as requested, we're going to be going through the differences between pseudocode and Python. And the pseudocode we're going to be talking about is the OCR exam reference language. So first things first, how to comment is different. So in pseudocode we use // and in Python it's the hashtag. And some things are fairly straightforward. So for example, casting, like converting between strings, integers, is the same in Python. Even these operators are the same, except for mod we use a percentage sign in Python, and for div we use a // but in pseudocode it's div and mod just for short, and even exponent is the same. To assign a variable we use a variable identifier and we assign it the value. And for a const, we use a const. Remember, a constant is a value that doesn't change, and a global variable is basically a variable that is accessible throughout the whole program. Inputting is the same. This is how you get the input from the user, and outputting is basically the same. So we do print. Now we're going to move on to iteration. Remember, iteration is your programming construct, and for loops in pseudocode, we do for I equals 0 to 9. Most commonly, students don't remember that it's actually inclusive and get confused between the Python. The Python version, we use I in range 0 to 10, where 10 is exclusive. So we don't include 10. So it goes from 0 to 9. And remember here that we also need a next I. Also, we don't need a colon. And we can also add a third variable here, which is called a step. Step is basically from the start. Remember, this is the start and this is the end. So from the start to the end, we go up in twos. This is what the step means. However, in Python, we will have 0 to 11. Remember, 11 is not included. So it goes from 0 to 10. And the step is the third variable. In while loop is very similar to Python, except this end while at the end. This basically just checks until the answer is equal to correct. When it's correct, it exits the loop. Same thing over here. Now we move on to dountil, which is only applicable to pseudocode, because Python, there's no dountil loops. So this is exactly the same as the while loop, but using a dountil loop. So make sure you're familiar with these. Now we move on to selection. Remember, that's a third programming construct, which is your if statements. And here, the only difference is that we have an else and an else if over here, and an end if. This is the three main difference in pseudocode. Here, and also here, because we don't have then, we use a colon and we use elif in Python. Also, if I've made any mistakes, let me know in the comment section down below. Also, speaking of mistakes, this should be a colon over here. We don't need a colon here. Make sure you indent correctly as well when you're using Python or pseudocode. Now, the switch case, there's no switch case in Python. However, there is a switch case in pseudocode, which basically switch day, and the case that day is sat, we're going to print out Saturday, sun, and Sunday. Now we move on to string manipulation. This is a table, so we have a keyword .length, which counts how many characters there are. Misconception over here is always that, do you include the index, do you not include the index? So it would be how you normally count. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, hence why this would be 5. And in Python, you do a similar thing, which is length, and you put the variable name inside, which will give 5 again. Now, to find a substring, this is basically your starting index, and this is how many characters you want after it. A common misconception is that this is the start and this is the end, like index, but it's not. So here we start at index 2, so 0, 1, 2, which is L, and we move on 2 places. So we get the first one, which is 1, L, and the next one, which is the second L. Let's do an example, 1 and 3. We start at index 1, so it's E, and we go 3 places, so E, L, L is what will be printed. Left is the exact characters we want from the left, so 2 would be HE because that's the left 2 ones, and the right 2 would be LO. In Python, we can't really do like these simple functions. Maybe there are, but from what I know, we use this, which is to slice a string. Again, I've made a video going through everything you need to know in Python, and I've gone through how to do this in that video, so go check it out. Also, we can use some shortcuts. Upper and lower basically converts it into uppercase, lowercase, and ASCII, which finds the value of the corresponding character, and this one does it in reverse order. Now we're going to move on to file handling. Again, I've gone through a whole video going through file handling, which everyone should know by now, and this is just the commands that you need in pseudocode. And in Python, again, I've gone through it in the video. You don't really need to know how to do it in Python, because this is very nice and straightforward. If you wanted to do this in Python, it would, firstly, we don't have a function that does this. Yeah, make sure you are familiar with this, and if you're not, go check out the video. It should pop up now. Now, arrays, again, I've gone through in depth in all the Python that you need to know for GCSEs. I've gone through these, but for pseudocode differences, we basically say array before the name, which is not necessary in Python. And again, we can't just create like colors with 5 and that will give us index from 0 to 4. Instead, we need to do like a for loop that will manually enter the elements in an array. Also, we can create an array. Similarly here, we just pass it, we say array because it's pseudocode, and we say the values that are inside. To access these values, we would say colors followed by a bracket which corresponds to the index. Again, if you're not familiar with this, go check out the video how you would declare a 2D array in pseudocode, and this is how you would access values from a pseudocode. And in Python, the difference is that we use 2 like separate brackets instead of passing it into 1. So with procedures, there's no procedures in Python. However, in pseudocode, we say procedure with the age pass. Remember, what is a procedure? Procedure does not return a value. A function returns a value. Make sure you know this. We write end procedure at the end. And to call this function, we just say the name, so age pass. If we run this, it would print you are old enough to write. Now we move on to functions. Functions, again, we can take in parameters. This is what this number is called. And we also end function. And remember to return something, because a function always returns a value. In Python, it's very similar. However, instead of function, we use a def, which is like a function definition. And again, it takes in the number and we square it and return it. And to call it, we pass in the argument. This is called an argument. This is called a parameter. And to call it, we basically say the name again. So yeah, this should be fairly straightforward. One thing that I have missed out is to find a random number. So to find a random number, we just say random, apologize for the bad handwriting, and we pass in the first and the last. So this would give a random number between 1 and 10. And in Python, we would do input random and randin. Hopefully this clears up the misconceptions between pseudocode and Python. So yeah, I'll see you in the next one.